There's a corner of Massachusetts where reality bends, a place locals whisper about but rarely name aloud. It stretches across nearly 200 square miles, covering the towns of Abington, Rehoboth, Freetown, and Bridgewater. The land looks ordinary enough: swamps, forests, old mills, and quiet colonial homes. But those who've lived here long enough call it something else: the Bridgewater Triangle. It's a place where compasses spin wildly, where lights dance over the trees at night, where creatures not born of this world have been seen stalking the mist. Police officers, pilots, hunters, and priests, they've all reported things that defy explanation. And deep inside, at the heart of it all, lies the Hockomock Swamp, the place where spirits dwell. Native tribes once avoided it. Modern explorers enter it only during daylight. What happens inside after sunset has never been fully told, until now. To understand the Bridgewater Triangle, you have to start centuries before Massachusetts was even a state. Long before colonial towns or paved roads, the Wampanoag people called this land sacred, but dangerous. They said the swamp was home to the spirits of their ancestors and guarded by powerful beings who punished intruders. When English settlers arrived in the 1600s, they ignored the warnings. They built homes near burial grounds, drained marshes, and cut sacred trees. The Wampanoag elders spoke of a curse that would one day turn the land against those who took it. According to legend, that curse began during King Philip's War, one of the bloodiest conflicts in North American history. Medicum, or King Philip, leader of the Wampanoag, fought to defend his people's land. When he was killed in 1676, his body was drawn and quartered, his head placed on a spike for 20 years, right in the center of what we now call the triangle. Locals say that's when the ground began to whisper. The first recorded hauntings began soon after. In the 18th century, farmers near Bridgewater reported hearing drums and war cries echoing through the fields at night, though no one was there. Horses would bolt for no reason, and tools went missing only to reappear in impossible places. By the 1900s, the stories grew darker. Strange orbs floated over the Hockomock Swamp. Hunters claimed to see massive winged creatures like pterodactyls soaring overhead, their leathery wings cutting across the moon. In 1971, 2 respected police officers from Bridgewater spotted a giant black creature flying silently above their cruiser, its wingspan wider than a car. When they stopped to look, it disappeared into the treeline, leaving only the smell of ozone in the air. Others have seen glowing humanoid shapes moving through the marsh, translucent, faceless, yet watching. Those who've encountered them report an overwhelming feeling of grief, as if standing in the presence of something ancient and angry. But it's not just ghosts or monsters that haunt this triangle, it's time itself. In 1976, a local hunter named William Russo claimed he encountered something beyond human understanding. One foggy night, while walking near his home in Rehoboth, he heard what sounded like a child singing in the mist. The voice was high and melodic, repeating a strange phrase. "E want you, E want you." Russo followed it, thinking it was a lost kid. But as he approached, he saw a small figure, 3 feet tall, with glowing eyes and grayish skin, standing beneath a streetlight. The thing looked up at him, stopped singing, and smiled. Russo ran home, trembling. When he returned the next morning with police, there were no footprints, only deep impressions in the mud, shaped like hooves. Decades later, when asked why he never went back, Russo replied simply, "Because it wasn't a kid. And it wasn't from here." Then came the UFOs. Between 1968 and 1980, hundreds of residents reported strange lights flying over Bridgewater and neighboring towns. A group of teenagers once claimed to see a massive glowing disc hovering silently above a field before shooting into the sky at impossible speed. A police officer on night patrol confirmed a similar sighting, a bright blue sphere following his car before vanishing. Even military radar briefly picked up unidentifiable objects moving erratically over southeastern Massachusetts. Scientists dismissed the reports as weather balloons or optical illusions, but locals knew better. Pilots flying over the area reported sudden equipment failures. Hikers' compasses spun in circles. One researcher, mapping the triangle's boundaries, found that the electromagnetic readings formed a perfect equilateral triangle, centered exactly over the Hockomock Swamp. And as one paranormal investigator put it, "Whatever's here, it wants to stay hidden. But sometimes it wants to be seen." As if the lights weren't strange enough, the Bridgewater Triangle began swallowing people. Between the 1950s and 1970s, dozens of residents went missing without a trace. One of the most famous cases was that of Mary Lou Arruda, a cheerful 15-year-old cheerleader from Raynham who vanished while riding her bicycle home one afternoon in 1978. Her bike was found abandoned along the roadside, but she was gone. 2 months later, her body was discovered tied to a tree deep inside the Freetown Fall River State Forest. Her cause of death: suffocation. Police arrested a local man named James Cater, who'd been convicted of a similar crime years earlier. But here's the chilling part: Cater swore he couldn't remember what happened that day. During questioning, he claimed he'd blacked out while driving near the swamp. His case dragged on for years, with retrials and appeals, but to this day, investigators whisper that there was something off about the whole thing, as if the forest itself had played a role. The Freetown Fall River State Forest is one of the Triangle's most sinister landmarks. 5,000 acres of dense, tangled wilderness. Rangers avoid it after dark. Locals tell stories of bonfires in the distance, of hooded figures chanting, of mutilated animals found arranged in ritual patterns. In the late 1970s and early 80s, police uncovered evidence of real satanic rituals taking place in the woods. One officer described stumbling upon a clearing filled with small altars, bones, and burned-out candles. Others reported finding graffiti and symbols associated with occult practices. There were even rumors that the so-called Fall River cult murders, which left 3 women dead between 1979 and 1980, were connected to the same area. Whether it was actual cult activity or something darker feeding off fear, no one could say for sure. But one thing was certain: people entered that forest with clear minds and came out changed, if they came out at all. Time itself seems to behave differently in the Bridgewater Triangle. Residents have described bizarre, missing time episodes, moments where hours vanish in what feels like minutes. In 1979, a group of campers near Assonet Ledge, a granite cliff in the forest, experienced something impossible. They were watching the stars when a flash of light engulfed the sky. One moment they were around the fire, the next, dawn was breaking, their watches showing they'd lost more than 4 hours. Cameras malfunctioned. Batteries drained instantly. One of the men later described hearing a faint mechanical hum throughout the night, like a generator beneath the earth. The Assonet Ledge has long been a hotspot for strange phenomena. Locals say it's haunted by the spirit of a native woman who threw herself from the cliff after her lover's betrayal. Others claim shadowy figures watch from the edge, disappearing when approached. Hikers who linger too long there often report the same feeling, that the ground itself is pulsing, alive, as if listening. In 1983, 2 teenagers went missing near the Hockomock Swamp. Their car was found parked beside a dirt path, doors locked, keys still in the ignition. Search teams combed the area for weeks, helicopters, dogs, volunteers, but nothing was ever found. The official report listed them as runaways, but their parents never believed it. Years later, a hunter stumbled upon something deep in the swamp: a rusted flashlight, half-buried boots, and a torn piece of a high school jacket. The discovery reignited local talk of the Triangle's hungry ground. Some say the swamp acts like a living organism, drawing people toward it, erasing them without a trace. Paranormal researchers have recorded strange electromagnetic spikes there, sudden drops in temperature, and disembodied voices calling out names. One investigator claimed he heard a whisper in the reeds saying, "Come home." He swore it was his brother's voice, the same brother who'd gone missing in 1969. When asked if he returned to investigate again, he said, "No. It already knows me." By the 1990s, the Bridgewater Triangle had become a magnet for UFO hunters, ghost investigators, and cryptid enthusiasts. The stories piled up: glowing saucers above Taunton, mysterious black dogs with red eyes on backroads, and even a Bigfoot-like creature spotted near the swamp. In 1997, a group of off-duty officers driving near Route 44 saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. They slowed down, and the figure vanished. Moments later, their car's engine stalled, and the radio emitted a burst of static followed by faint laughter. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was standing behind the car. One officer later described it as a man-shaped shadow with no face. To skeptics, these are urban legends. But to locals, they're warnings. People here don't walk alone at night. They don't stop when something calls their name from the woods. Because in the Bridgewater Triangle, curiosity isn't brave, it's bait. By the turn of the millennium, curiosity about the triangle had grown into obsession. Amateur ghost hunters flocked to the region, armed with camcorders and EMF meters, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. One of the most famous investigations occurred in 2001, when a small team entered the Hockomock Swamp with night vision equipment and a drone camera. The footage they brought back was disturbing. Near midnight, one camera recorded a faint humanoid shape moving between the trees. No heat signature, no clear outline, just darkness that seemed to bend the light around it. Then, for exactly 17 seconds, every piece of their gear froze. The audio log caught a low-frequency hum, followed by what sounded like breathing. When the systems rebooted, one of the team members was missing. Search efforts turned up nothing except his boot prints, which stopped abruptly at the edge of a pond. Local police dismissed it as equipment failure and panic, but to this day, that man's body has never been recovered. Stories like this might be dismissed as urban legends, if not for the consistency across decades. From the earliest colonial reports to modern recordings, people describe the same feelings: disorientation, whispers, light anomalies, and something unseen moving just beyond the edge of vision. Even the Wampanoag legends describe the swamp as a thin place, where the barrier between the living and the dead wears thin. One of their stories tells of a guardian spirit, a being of mist and shadow that protects the land by consuming those who disrespect it. Some researchers suggest that trauma from centuries of conflict, massacres, and desecration has left a psychic scar on the land itself. Whether that's metaphor or something more, the result feels the same: the triangle doesn't forget. In 2010, a geologist testing the soil near Bridgewater noticed unusual magnetic readings that caused his compass to spin wildly. He later said, "It's like the ground is confused about where north is." Then came the ghost lights. Residents of Rehoboth and Seekonk began reporting floating spheres of orange and blue light hovering over power lines and swamps. Police received so many calls they started logging them in a phenomenon report. Witnesses described the orbs as moving intelligently, darting away when approached, sometimes splitting into two before vanishing. In 2013, a local man named Carl Donovan filmed one on his phone from his back porch. The glowing orb hovered silently for 30 seconds, then shot straight upward into the clouds without a sound. The footage went viral. Skeptics suggested ball lightning, while others claimed drone hoaxes. But Carl's voice in the video still haunts listeners, a trembling whisper. "It's watching me." Paranormal experts have compared these orbs to will-o'-the-wisps, spiritual lanterns said to lure travelers to their doom. The question remains, are these lights natural plasma, or intelligent watchers of the triangle, marking those who step too close? The Bridgewater Triangle also carries a criminal undercurrent, a shadow of real-world horror intertwined with myth. Between 1978 and 1995, police records show an abnormal number of violent crimes, disappearances, and ritualistic killings across the three corners of the region. One case stands out, the 1991 Swamp Cabin Incident. Authorities discovered a hidden shack deep in the forest, filled with dozens of Polaroid photographs, all depicting the same clearing in different seasons. No people, no objects, just the same empty spot. Investigators noticed the final image was taken at night, and faintly visible in the corner was a figure, pale, tall, featureless. When forensics returned to analyze the site days later, the shack had been burned to the ground. Locals whispered that whoever took the photos had captured something they weren't supposed to. Some say it was the same faceless man seen by drivers on Route 44. Others say it was the triangle taking its picture back. As media attention grew, skeptics tried to map out a rational explanation. Could electromagnetic disturbances cause hallucinations? Could swamp gas and seismic vibrations explain the lights and noises? In 2015, a team from MIT conducted a short study of the area's geomagnetic field, measuring anomalies that could affect human perception. The results were inconclusive. The instruments registered mild distortions, but nothing extraordinary. Yet when the researchers reviewed their data logs, several entries had inexplicably been erased. The file names were replaced by a single repeating phrase. "Still watching." They insisted it was a glitch. But one in turn resigned the next day, claiming to hear voices and white noise recordings for weeks afterward. When a local journalist asked if he'd return to finish the study, he simply replied, "You can't study something that studies you back." The triangle, it seems, resists investigation, as though secrecy itself were part of its survival. In 2018, drone footage from amateur explorers reignited global curiosity about the Bridgewater Triangle. The team, known online as the Phantom Cartographers, uploaded aerial shots of the Hockomock Swamp, only to find something impossible upon review. One frame showed a wide, circular clearing surrounded by dense fog, with what appeared to be symbols carved into the marshland itself, like enormous runes visible only from above. The next frame, taken seconds later, showed nothing but mud and reeds. Experts analyzed the footage and found no signs of digital tampering. One investigator noted that the coordinates of the clearing aligned almost perfectly with the 1675 site of a violent clash during King Philip's War, the same war in which Wampanoag warriors vowed that the land would remember the blood. To the descendants of the fallen, this discovery felt like a whisper from history. But to scientists and skeptics, it was another layer in a mystery that refuses to stay buried. Local historians point out that the Bridgewater Triangle's darkness might not be supernatural, at least, not entirely. The region is soaked in centuries of grief, native displacement, colonial massacres, brutal murders, and industrial collapse. Some believe that human suffering itself can leave an echo, absorbed into the land like radiation. Paranormal researchers call this a psychic imprint, a haunting born from trauma rather than ghosts. And in the Triangle, that theory fits all too well. In an abandoned factory near Taunton, EVP recordings captured a woman's voice softly repeating the word, "sorry," over and over. The building once employed hundreds of textile workers, most of whom were immigrants forced into inhumane conditions. When the factory burned down in 1893, dozens died locked inside. Even now, urban explorers claim to hear machinery clanking in the dark, as if the work never ended. The Triangle, it seems, is not just haunted by spirits, but by history itself. One of the eeriest aspects of the Triangle is how it blurs time. Multiple witnesses have reported time slips, moments when the world seems to stutter, lights dim, and sound fades. In 2020, a couple hiking near Freetown State Forest claimed they saw an old wooden bridge appear where none existed moments before. When they crossed it, the forest looked different, darker, untouched, like stepping into another century. Their phones lost signal, their watches stopped. Minutes later, they crossed back, and the bridge was gone. Their photos showed nothing but trees. A physicist who reviewed the case said the couple may have experienced temporal distortion due to geomagnetic anomalies. Paranormal researchers had another term for it, a fold in reality. These slips may explain reports of colonial soldiers seen marching through fog, or phantom vehicles on Route 24 that vanish into thin air. In the Bridgewater Triangle, even time is unreliable, a fragile thread tangled in something ancient. In recent years, true crime has added another chilling dimension to the Triangle's myth. Several disappearances have occurred along its borders with eerie consistency. Hikers vanish without footprints, cars are found abandoned with engines still running, and once in a while, a body surfaces with no cause of death. The most infamous modern case is that of college student Rachel Tenney, who went missing in 2019 after texting a friend that she was almost home. Her phone last pinged near a forgotten cemetery inside the Triangle. Weeks later, her car was discovered nearby, covered in thin ash. Forensics found trace elements of magnetite, a mineral rarely found on the surface, but common deep underground. Investigators blamed environmental interference for corrupted GPS data. Locals have another theory: the triangle took her. Whether she was a victim of foul play, a tragic accident, or something else entirely, her case became a warning. Once the triangle notices you, it doesn't let go easily. Today, the Bridgewater Triangle stands as one of America's most enigmatic frontiers, a living paradox of folklore and fact. Scientists, believers, skeptics, and storytellers all circle its borders, each seeking answers that may never come. But ask anyone who's been there long enough, and they'll tell you, the air feels heavier, the shadows move differently, and silence itself seems alive. Whether it's ancient vengeance, geomagnetic chaos, or an unclassified phenomenon, something is undeniably wrong with this place. Maybe the truth isn't meant to be solved. Maybe the Bridgewater Triangle is a mirror, showing us the darkness we've buried in the land and ourselves. And if you ever find yourself driving down Route 44 on a foggy night, and you see a pale figure waving for help, keep driving. Because in the Bridgewater Triangle, not every lost soul wants to be found.